This recording is of the closing minutes of Colonel John Glenn's flight in a Mercury capsule on the 20th of February 1962. The launching was from Cape Canaveral, Florida, USA. The rocket was an Atlas using liquid fuel. It was launched at 1450 hours GMT, orbital speed 17,535 miles per hour, at a height of between 100 miles at the low and 160 miles at the high point of the orbit. The time taken to complete one circuit was 89 minutes. The capsule completed 3 circuits of the Earth and landed at approximately 1950 hours GMT in the Atlantic Ocean. It was picked up at approximately 20:05 hours GMT by a destroyer. This was the first orbital flight by an American.
But of course it's been a big operation for other countries too. Indeed, as you know, we on the BBC have been planning this, certainly I have, for many months past.
Well, one's heard the names of 3 of these commentators, Merrill Muller, Peter Hackis, and J. Barbary. Muller is a familiar name to me. Is that, by any chance, Red Muller, who was in London during the war for a long time?
It certainly is Red Muller, a delightful man to work with. I've worked with him a good deal on this and on this story and the Shepherd Yacht and so on. He's one of America's most experienced and able correspondents. He spent, I think, pretty well the whole war in London, reporting the Blitz from the British point of view, and he has a healthy respect for the British.
And what about Peter Hackis? Do you know him too?
Peter Hackis, yes, he is the NBC's space expert, and of course very well known in America, and always popping up on television and so on with informed pieces. And J. Barbary, the third of their correspondents that we've been hearing a lot of today, is in fact the NBC man stationed at the Cape, and he reports every launch.
And in fact they must have had a tremendous number of commentators spread, well, not throughout the world, but on the various ships. We've heard people's names like Bill Downs and so on.
Yes, the whole thing is done on a pool basis. All the 3 television networks are working as a pool, and and radio has a similar pool, and the newspapers are in a pool, so they're all able to draw on one another's contributions from the ships, the aircraft carriers, the aeroplanes, and so on.
Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed. We understand now that NBC have finished their news bulletin. They're back on the air in the last moments of anxiety and tension, so back to the NBC commentary.
In outer space, in a weightless condition, astronaut John Glenn is now approaching Hawaii. In fact, he's just southwest of Kauai, Hawaii. At this point, he will communicate with Hawaii. He has voice communication with this station on this orbit, and begin to pick up also a little east of Hawaii, Point Arguello in California, and astronaut Walt Schirra. Between the station of Hawaii and Arguello, the retrorockets must be fired to bring him down in the southwestern Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles southeast of us here at Cape Canaveral, in approximately 31 minutes. We'll be watching the clock and waiting for reports from spacecraft control, and we'll try to measure this out for you as it goes by the map and by the clock. Jay?
We're about 12 and a half minutes now from retro fire time, and the spacecraft is being buttoning up for this. However, there have been some discussion, Merrill, in the past few minutes of whether or not they will go to the automatic system or whether they will go by fly-by-wire. For that, we switch to Colonel Powers at spacecraft control.
This is Mercury Control. The tracking station at Mouchet, Australia, made contact at 1:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the station at Woomera, Australia, at 1:51 Eastern Standard Time. Flight controller at Mouchet confirms the spacecraft in a go condition as it passed over Mouchet. We have about 2.5 minutes of tape, recorded voice broadcast from the astronaut acquired from Australia. The tapes are prepared now, and stand by for the tape.
We will interrupt these tape broadcasts at any time.
On the right side, everything is outboard except the fuel quantity warning light, which is on ahead. That's switch inboard to cut the audio. The only 2 switch fuses in the center off position on the right are Richard Jettison and Echo Manual. Roger, comfort control setting. cabin temp is setting number 2. Setting on the suit temp is beyond the 1.7 mark. I repeat, beyond the 1.7 mark, which is the maximum setting. Roger, understand. What is your opinion on the gyro problem, John? Well, I don't know. I want to start lining up just as carefully as I can here in a minute to see whether the scanners will pick it up and correct it in so we have a good retro-fire attitude. If not, I'll line up myself, over. Roger, do you have your 3-dog easy no-tail times from Indian Ocean ship? Yes, I did. I got those okay. Roger, and I gave you a recommend change retro plot to 043237. On your retro, using ASCS, you'll be using high torque thrusters for a retro-fire mode there. What do you feel about retroing by ASCS backed up by fly-by-wire? Well, you can't do it on ASCS and fly-by-wire. You mean on manual? Right, well, being ready to go to fly-by-wire, or backing it up on manual proportional. Yes, if the ASCS appears to be programming and holding a good orbit attitude, I'll let it go on ASCS and back it up with manual. If not, if it appears that the gyros are caught as they were a little while ago, then I'll just do a manual retro-fire. Roger. Are you in manual proportional or fly-by-wire now? Capcom, are you in manual proportional or fly-by-wire now? I think you've lost. Hello, lost contact. Friendship 7, we check Capcom.
We are approaching the critical time for the decision to fire the retro rockets. As you just heard John Glenn say, if the
Warrior Stripling, and to the east of the command ship.
That voice you just heard is the Randolph, the carrier Randolph, which somehow got into this frequency, but we'll straighten it out in a moment. You just heard astronaut John Glenn say that if his automatic pilot did not hold the capsule in its correct position for retro firing, he would use either the fly-by-wire sequence, which is an intermediate electric booster on the little jets that control him, or he would go to manual control, which is direct hand control on the jets. In either case, he's got to fly this thing into proper position. He's also got to nose it up before the retros fire, provided the automatic pilot does not work. He must have tested that before now, because we have reached, I believe, the critical time for the discussion of who's going to fire the retros and when. Jay?
We're about 9 minutes from the time that they will be fired, either automatically or by John Glenn. However, as you pointed out, it's pretty apparent at this time that he will be on the fly-by-wire system, Merrill, at the time that the retros are fired. He has proven without a doubt that he can hold this spacecraft at the 34 degrees tilt with the horizontal, the proper attitude for a re-entry. And this decision will be made at this time, and John Glenn will fly this spacecraft right back to the Earth. And these retros will bring him across the North American continent, dropping him some 800 miles southeast of Cape Canaveral in the Randolph-Curia area.
He should be at this point just northeast of Kauai, Hawaii. And his retro firing point, as we said, was roughly 600 miles west of Los Angeles. He's coming up on it rapidly, and we should begin to get some word from spacecraft control very shortly.
There's another thing. He's going through a complete equipment check to make sure everything is in its proper place. What isn't, he will fasten it down in a stowage for the re-entry. At this moment, nothing in the spacecraft weighs an ounce while in weightless flight. But during re-entry, every object will increase its own Earth weight by about 7.5 times. Now, the astronaut doesn't want any object hitting him during this heavy weight portion of the re-entry. It could be serious damage. Now to Colonel Powers at Spacecraft Control.
Mercury Control. The Mercury tracking station on Canton Island acquired the Friendship 7 spacecraft at 2:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The tracking station on Hawaii contacted the Friendship 7 spacecraft at 2:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As we proceeded around from Australia toward Hawaii, we detected an indication of a problem with the heat shield deployment switch. A check was made over Hawaii, which confirmed that the system was operating properly and that the signal apparently was erroneous. He is also completing now his retro-firing checklist. And this is a process by which he makes sure that all of his onboard equipment is secured, that he has checked out his attitude control system, that he is in good condition and preparing to fire those retrorockets to begin that long landing flight toward the Atlantic. This is Mercury Control.
John Glenn has apparently opted to fire his own retrorockets, to fly his own space capsule into position and fire them 1, 2, 3, 10 seconds apart while he holds that thing right on the exact line it's got to be to put him down somewhere near the carrier Randolph. Jay?
Senior of all the 7 astronauts, John Glenn, pardon me, the man that is in position to do exactly that and has proven his ability to control his Friendship 7. At this moment, this will mean a lot to a lot of pilots that we might have in our audience. John is going through his pre-retro rocket checklist with the Hawaii tracking station, the capsule communicator. Now, the capsule communicator will read off the checklist with Glenn confirming every detail of the pre-retro test and that it has been completed. Each item will be gone over thoroughly by the Hawaii tracking station in Glenn. Now, just a few minutes before the Friendship 7 will start looking for a place on this Earth again.
Anytime within the next 4 minutes, we should have some word about the beginning of the retro firing. It should come between now and 2:20 or 2:21 Eastern Standard Time. Astronaut John Glenn, still moving 17,535 miles an hour, is approximately 750 to 800 miles west of Los Angeles over the Pacific at an altitude of about 100 miles. He will shortly begin the retro firing for descent. Meantime, the recovery forces are all set, and we're going to make a quick switch to them, but if we get the retro firing, we'll take the air back. To Bill Downs aboard the carrier Randolph.
The Randolph is springing to life as officers now are going to the bridge. The helicopter pilots are manning their planes, waiting for the signal to warm up. In 9 or 10 minutes or so, we hear that Colonel Glenn's capsule parachute will appear over the ship. I'll give you some idea of where we are and what is going to happen. The Orbit 3 ballpark is a rectangle of the Caribbean. It is about 200 miles long and 50 miles wide, slanting slightly southeastward above the coastlines of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, about 150 to 200 miles north of those two islands. The carrier Randolph is located about in the center of this rectangle. About 40 miles on the Florida side of the carrier is the destroyer Stripling, and to the east of the command ship is the destroyer Noah. When Colonel Glenn's capsule splashes in, all 3 of these ships will race to be first on the spot. The basic plan calls for one of the destroyers to pick up the capsule after the astronaut leaves it and is picked up by helicopter. On the deck of the Randolph, the 3 helicopter recovery team under Marine Major Will Nelson will be checked out for the umpteenth time. This morning, an hour before the scheduled launch, the 3 Marine choppers flew off the Randolph for a final test hop. The recovery crews, including the Naval scuba divers, Bob Dixon and Bob Todd, the men who will make first personal contact with astronaut Glenn, then will drop from the recovery copter to affix the donut raft on the bottom of the Mercury capsule to give it greater stability. Approximately 10 minutes before the astronaut is scheduled to splash in, Marine helicopters will take off and head for the splash zone. Major Nelson and the lead plane will attempt to maintain radio contact with the astronaut and may be the first to know the colonel's condition. If no radio contact is at first received from the Mercury vehicle, will be the first to make direct personal contact with the astronaut, and if something appears to be wrong with him, then diver Dixon will fire a Ritz smoke bomb, which will summon helicopter number 3, in which is riding Army Captain Jerry Strong, one of the 2 men Mercury medical team standing by here on the Randolph. We're waiting and ready to go, and Colonel Glenn is going to get a very big welcome from the crew of the Randolph indeed. This is Bill Downs aboard the Randolph, 1,000 miles southeast of Canaveral.
You won't have long to wait, Phil. In just about 2 minutes, we'll start the firing sequence on a corrected clock. The firing sequence of the retrorockets, which must slow down the space capsule so that gravity grabs it and pulls it back into your landing area 1,000 miles southeast of us here at Cape Canaveral. Jay Barbary has just told me an astounding fact, and Jay, you've got a little more than a minute and a half to explain it. The scientists have misjudged this 3-orbital flight around the world by 9 seconds.
That's correct, Merrill. The plan would have been for the flight to come at 4 hours, 32 minutes, and 28 seconds after the rocket lifted from this Earth for the retro sequence. They missed this orbit just enough to vary 3 seconds for one 24,000-mile completed trip around the Earth. Now the flight time, firing time of the retro sequence should begin at 4 hours, 32 minutes, and 37 seconds past the hour of from liftoff, and we're coming up onto that now. We're
15 seconds from now.
15 seconds from now. This is the
10
corrected
seconds
time.
from now.
10 seconds for the first
5
firing.
seconds from now.
We are now at coming up on 35. We are now up on 37, and the first retro rocket should have been fired. 10 seconds apart. Glenn should have fired his second retro rocket at this moment.
These are small rockets in the base or the face of the capsule as it's flying, but they have tremendous effect and kick up there in space. We have to switch immediately to Colonel Powers at spacecraft control. All 3 retro rockets should have been fired by now. They fire 10 seconds apart over an elapsed time of 30 seconds. They, of course, kick the capsule backwards from its line of flight.
This is Mercury Control. Our California station has made contact with the Friendship 7 spacecraft at 2:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the retro rocket firing sequence was initiated in the spacecraft. The retro firing attitude was assumed, and the 3 retro rockets have fired. They've been confirmed by the pilot and by our telemetry here in the Mercury Control Center. John Glenn's comment was it felt like he was going to send him clear back to Hawaii. The retro rockets have fired. The re-entry process will be initiated shortly. This is Mercury Control.
3,200 miles away, dropping rapidly now from the California coast to the southwestern Atlantic. He's got to lose over 100 miles an altitude, over 17,500 miles an hour of speed. His landing speed in the Atlantic should be about 20 miles per hour. So now he undergoes tremendous strain, tremendous heat, but he is on course and on time, and the drop should be within 5 or 10 miles of one of the 3 ships out there in the recovery area. Jay?
Has about 9 minutes of this to go through. After the retro rockets fired, the exhausted rocket package should have been jettisoned, and the spacecraft will automatically assume its correct re-entry attitude, of course, with John Glenn holding it there. This should have occurred about 1 minute after the retro rocket sequence and should have been completed at this time. The next maneuver for the Friendship 7 is to point its blunt end of the bell-shaped spacecraft toward the Earth on the proper trajectory for re-entry. Now, if you recall, it was tilted slightly upward at retro fire. This will be the spacecraft's re-entry position so that the astronaut will have his back against the forces of re-entry, traveling backwards for the G-forces and the heat of the atmosphere. He reported the 3 retro kicks as being quite tremendous.
He should now be descending somewhere in the area between White Sands, New Mexico, and Corpus Christi, Texas, passing just north of Corpus Christi and Houston. But we'll have to check that out a little faster with some arithmetic. Anybody got a sharpened pencil? In any case, his descent is going to be just below White Sands, New Mexico, just north of Corpus Christi, Texas, just north of Houston, almost over New Orleans, the corner of Florida at the Gulf of Mexico, almost over Canaveral, just south of Cape Canaveral, and down over the Bahama Islands, where incidentally he will be taken this evening for 48 hours of rest and debriefing at Grand Turk, and then into the basin where the Randolph and 2 destroyers are cruising, waiting to pick him up. That's about 1,000 miles southeast of us, and about 700 miles southeast of the Bahamas. All weather is clear. Everything is ready. And John Glenn is descending to Colonel Powers at Spacecraft Control.
Spacecraft at 2:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have confirmation of retro-rocket firing. We have instructed John Glenn to retain his retro-rocket packet at least until he gets over Texas. This is a precautionary measure to double-check on the seemingly erroneous switch location indication we had earlier. John feels he held his attitude properly during the retro-rocket firing process and says that he can see the coast of California. He's now reporting cloud cover down toward Mexico. The spacecraft is now arcing down on its landing trajectory toward the Atlantic. This is Mercury Control.
He's taking tremendous control of that thing.
Apparently he's still in the 34 degrees tilt with a horizontal in case they do have to refire the retro rockets for any reason at all. He must get rid of this retro rocket package, Merrill, before he can tilt it down the blunt end to hit the heat.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, because I've just been asked to make a switch, and I don't think we should switch at this time. The procedures are out of whack. We better stand by with this space capsule till we've got it safely spotted in the atmosphere. We're going to do so.
One thing for sure, Merrill, this is the most critical and part of the entire flight at this moment coming up.
That retro package has to be jettisoned before he comes into the atmosphere, too deep in the atmosphere, because it has to be off the capsule before he hits the Atlantic.
This is true before he can drop his blunt end, hit the blanket of atmosphere about 50 miles high. And he'll be slowing down quite a bit before then, but he's got to have that blunt end to take that 3,000 degrees temperature. That's hot.
Incidentally, if any of the people in Texas are worried about whether they might have a piece of titanium flying out of space to hit them on the head, don't worry. It'll burn up before it even reaches the ground. But it's got to be dropped somewhere over the state of Texas, somewhere between El Paso and Corpus Christi. We'll get the word from Spacecraft Control in a moment.
That's what I started to say. All we can do is wait now. This is the critical moment. And he should be in the water in about 6 minutes. About 6 minutes.
Jay, do you want to go out and do you want to take my glasses and go out and see if you can spot any contrails? Because we should be picking up some contrails in a couple of minutes, all things being equal. Will you try that?
I sure will, Merrill.
Take that portable microphone with you, will you? Because if you pick anything up, just holler at me, and you've got it.
Okay.
Excuse us for producing on the air, but right now we don't know where we stand, and we have a little problem, so has John Glenn, and we're going to stick with him until that problem is solved because it affects his recovery. It doesn't mean he's in any greater danger. It just means that it could make the landing rougher, and we're going to watch it out. 4:39, approximately 11 minutes to go, a little bit more than 11 minutes to go to splash. We should get some word pretty soon about the cleansing of the capsule, if I may use that word. Right now it's carrying extraneous material. That extraneous material is on the bottom of the capsule. So is some flotation gear. So is sonar gear, so that ships at sea can pick up the capsule if no one sees it. So is chaff, so that the radar carrying airplanes can read the capsule by radar. All of those things are in the bottom of the capsule, and that retro package has to be dumped before those things become operative. hours and 40 minutes since launch. And Jay is out where he can scan the sky. And Jay, are you able to see anything out there where you are?
Yes, Merrill, we have a contrail over the southern tip of Florida at this time. It's beginning to get heavier as it etches itself across the sky. However, we cannot confirm that this is the spacecraft Friendship 7, but it's in the proper position, and it could very well be so at this time. We're watching this
that
contrail.
southern tip, is it to the southwest?
Yes, this is correct. It's to the southwest. I've
Coming down
had my
over the Gulf of
directions
Mexico.
mixed up slightly here, Merrill, but you are correct. It is slightly to the southwest.
Coming down over the Gulf of Mexico.
This is true. It is pretty much in that area, and it's headed on the right course. I do not think that this is a high-flying aircraft. It could very well be the Friendship 7. However, I say we cannot confirm it. This is just about the right trajectory, and it seems to be getting lower in the atmosphere, Merrill.
If it's lower, Jay, we're a little early. I'm afraid that's going to turn out to be one of the jets looking for him.
It could very well be a chase
We're a little
plane.
too early for that geographical position, Jay. Go further to the west, to your northwest. Sweep that way. Remember, there are about 12 or 14 jets up between here and New Orleans, and we've got to expect those jets to show contrails in that whole area, so you've got to look for one starting very high and dropping very fast, about 5 times the speed of that jet. Jay, incidentally, we've just got word that everything is going according to plan. We don't know about the jettisoning of the retro package, but apparently it has been jettisoned, and Glenn's space capsule will touch down at about 2:37 Eastern Standard Time. In about 7 minutes from now, Jay.
Well, then this would be quite early, Merrill, for the contrail we see high overhead here that we thought was a possibility of being the spacecraft Friendship 7. However, we will keep our eyes peeled to the west just in case we see this.
Swing more toward the northwest. He's above you. He's behind you from the area you're apparently sweeping now. We go now in a few moments, Jay, so don't cut in, please, for a few moments. We're going to get some late word from spacecraft control.
This is Mercury Control. Friendship 7 spacecraft is approaching the coast of Florida at this time during his re-entry process. We have advised him that the weather in his landing area involves 1/10 cloud cover and 10 miles visibility. This should not present any hazard at all during the landing operation. He is now maintaining control of the spacecraft using the fly-by-wire system and the manual system as a backup. This is Mercury Control.
This is absolutely fantastic that a man can control this thing in the tremendous changes of altitude and speed and pressures and heat that he is going through, and that the capsule itself is going through. We are about 5 minutes from touchdown, a little over 5 minutes from touchdown. Keep your eyes peeled, Jay. Your mic is live. Just let us know if you spot that contrail.
We're watching the west now as he's approaching us here, Merrill. If we see anything, we'll let you know right away. Obviously, the first contrail was a high-flying jet.
The giant radar screen below us on the Cape here has swung around and is pointing northwest and still tracking slightly, left to right, trying to pick up. It must have something. It's just hung on to something and glued. No, it's still swinging slightly. It has suddenly glued, Jay, so it's on to something. It's begun swinging now in a very gentle turn down toward the southeast. Very gentle. It must be tracking the capsule so they know exactly where he is, altitude, speed, and everything else.
We might add from out here at this time just one thought, Merrill. This man is indeed a test pilot. This marks a big difference between this nation's astronauts.
East coast of Florida. He is encountering the atmosphere. We estimate that an ionization layer involved in the reentry process is preventing us from having direct communication with him. This is Mercury Control.
The ionization in the atmosphere means that at any moment, and we are speaking now behind him, we cannot keep up with the pace of his descent, neither can spacecraft control. At any moment, the drogue chute will come out. That little drogue chute, it's not so little, is designed, of course, to help slow down the capsule after it's in the atmosphere, slow it down even further. It'll be doing about 1,500 miles an hour when it first enters the atmosphere, and friction begins to slow it down. It is slowing it down now, of course, but from 1,500, friction will begin to slow it down to about 270 when the drogue comes out. That drogue will flap for a while to slow him down a little more, and then the giant chute follows it out. The 63-foot chute, which is designed to land this capsule at 20 miles an hour into a calm Atlantic and a clear day. We should have that word on the chute on the chute itself, the parachute, at any moment.
Have an indication that receiving equipment at Grand Bahama Island is receiving beacon transmissions from the spacecraft. We are not receiving any voice communication at this time. On the basis of his present flight trajectory, we estimate that he will land within about a mile of a destroyer associated with the USS Randolph at the end of the third orbit. This is Mercury.
Around the world astronaut. Number 3 helicopter contains a doctor in case there's any trouble, but we do not expect that. Pilot and the command of the Marine helicopter team, and they are heading northward from the ship. Apparently,
Bill down.
the recovery area
Can you
and
stop
by
it,
the
Bob?
helicopters. Following are 3 other helicopters, which carry NASA technicians and the official photographers. Piloting the recovery helicopter is Major Will Nelson of Wood River, Illinois, who has been a veteran and doing capsule recovery work since the NASA project started. His co-pilot is Lieutenant Frank Berta of Fox River Grove, Illinois. They are now heading around in a circle around the ship. We have not yet seen any sign of the drogue parachute, a 6-foot affair that opens up at about 40,000 feet to add stability to the slowing capsule. It is a perfect day here for this kind of an operation. The sky is unblemished. There is on the horizon just a few scattering of clouds. Otherwise, above us and in the recovery area, feeling unlimited. A wind of about 15 knots, or about 16 to 18 miles an hour is blowing. We are heading into that wind at about 15 or 20 knots and sailing eastward. On either side of it are the destroyers Nora and Stripling, about 40 miles away. In the event there is an under or overshoot. The basic plan.
John Glenn's parachute should be in sight now from one of the orbiting aircraft, circling aircraft, and we have heard, as you heard, although it was garbled because one of the ship transmissions came in on top of it, Colonel Powers reported that Glenn would land within about 1 mile of a destroyer, not the carrier Randolph. That means that either of the destroyers, I didn't get its name, so I can't identify whether it's the one cruising north of the Randolph or the one cruising south of the Randolph, but he is going to land about a mile from one of the ships. Therefore, these helicopters have to get from the Randolph out to that destroyer area and then spot the capsule. The destroyer itself should be picking up some kind of vision sighting now, eyeball sighting as they call it here. But in any case, the circling aircraft and the naval ships at sea should begin to read the signals that are dropping out of the space capsule itself, the chaff on radar, the sonar signal from the capsule when it hits the ocean, or even the dye markers for the high-flying aircraft. The capsule drops dye markers, which indicate its approximate landing position. All of these things help pinpoint him, and he should be on the water now at any moment. But we have no visual sighting yet, and we're going to try to keep this thing going until somebody comes up with a visual sighting.
He should have hit the water just at this moment, as you pointed out, Merrill. Of course, according to the time given by Spacecraft Control Center moments ago from the re-entry. Now, we have no confirmation that the drogue chute was deployed.
They say that they have cracked the capsule. The drogue chute should be opening. If it is not already opened, you want to watch for it off to the right and slightly ahead of the ship. And if you can be seen at all, it should be over there. In just a few seconds, the main chute should blossom. They say that the drogue chute has opened. We are looking directly into the sun. It's practically impossible to see into this bright tropic sun. However, they have spotted a beautiful sight at 10,800 feet. A beautiful sight at 10,800 feet. We are still very good.
Main chute is open. It is a little northwest of the carrier Randolph.
Spotting it. Have you spotted it through the sun, Mel? No. I have a lieutenant spotter down here. He has not yet seen it. Somebody with better eyes, or at least sunglasses of deeper hue than mine, assuming that it's a beautiful sight. We have not yet seen it.
The carrier bridge is reporting it on the ship's own speaker system.
Helicopters, though, are still circling slightly ahead of the ship. We are again circling more to the south and to the west.
The drop from 10,000 feet.
The radar tracking say the drogue chute has opened. I have yet to see anyone that's on board ship that has spotted the main chute.
Radar says it has
The
opened.
rescue copters are still circling.
In any case, we pointed out earlier, John Glenn is going to land closer to one of the destroyers. Each is 50 miles away from the carrier. And since they are circling to the south and west, it must be the northern destroyer. They must be coming around on course.
As far as I can find out, no one has yet spotted it. Just a moment. Have you seen it? Should be up. We have not been able to spot this ship with the naked eye, and it should be perhaps more to the west. We are turning in that direction. The rescue copters have not yet headed for the rescue area or the splash area.
They probably won't head off until the capsule is down, since it will be out of the range of immediate contact with the helicopters. The capsule certainly is being circled now by...
The rescue copters are now heading They are summoning the destroyer Noah to head for the area which is west, which would mean that the capsule would drop someplace between the Randolph you have contact with the Lieutenant, do you have contact with the capsule as yet?
Long-range aircraft are circling
They
that
do not have
capsule. That's
contact with
almost
the capsule. He has
certain.
not
The
been
huge
spotted.
chute is open.
Whatever radar tracking that was. It was not a valid track, apparently. Now, the copters have been ordered to the west. It apparently has been a undershoot, if you want to call it that. In other words, the capsule did not fly over the carrier, and the U.S. Noah, the destroyer Noah, under the command of J.D. Exum, now reports to the carrier that the Noah does have the capsule
capsule at sea and underway if necessary.
And if they recover Colonel Glenn, he'll get a welcome he's never had before. The competition on this force, as you know, has been terrific, and particularly as these...
John Glenn's capsule must be in the water by now, but NOAA is on its way. There must be aircraft overhead, and those helicopters will go off regardless, because the helicopters...
Now developed that there is a race between the helicopters to get to Colonel Glenn and the destroyer NOAA.
If the helicopters get there first, they need to land off, Red.
If necessary, they might throw ketchup bottles at the choppers. They have the honor to make this historic rescue. The NOAA would be about 20 to 30 miles straight ahead of us to the west, a little to the southwest. The ship is not in sight. It is impossible to see the capsule, and we did not see the drogue chute, nor did we see the main 63-foot capsule chute either. The reports coming into the ship.
That's about 30 minutes steaming for the NOAA.
Capsule is in sight. Is there any word, Lieutenant, of the astronaut's condition? The NOAA has the capsule in sight, is the only thing we've got. The NOAA has the capsule in sight. 55 miles from the Randolph. It is now 55 miles from the Randolph, and we will make then full steam toward that area, rendezvous with the helicopters, which would take us about what? About a half hour, I would think. Maybe an hour? In other words, this was
the race that Phil Downs was telling you about from the carrier Randolph means essentially this. The helicopters with faster flying speed can get to the capsule first and pick out John Glenn, pick out the astronaut himself, and just hold the capsule level and buoyant until the NOAA comes alongside with its recovery gear, and the NOAA can pick up the capsule. The NOAA is about 30 minutes steaming from the capsule location. The helicopters could be there in approximately, well, the minute they take off, they could be there in less than 2 minutes. But they're being held on the deck because it gives them longer fuel range over the capsule, and they want that because if there's any further emergency, although there's no reason to believe there should be one now, if they need it, they'll have the gas in the tanks for any problem that might arise.
We just have a word here, Merrill, that Colonel Glenn has been advised to stay inside his spacecraft, Friendship 7, if he can. However, if necessary, he can come out of that spacecraft, float around in his own life raft.
The problem here, of course, is not to let that door blow prematurely and let any waves get in, but these waves are very flat today. Nevertheless, it'd be silly to take any chance now. And when there's a chopper overhead and hooked up, John Glenn can take the option of blowing the door, climbing up into the helicopter, and he probably will, in which case, as you pointed out, Jay, he'll be flown back to the Randolph. Or he has the option of saying, I'm going to sit tight, swing me aboard, you gobs, and the destroyer will pick him up.
Mr. Kennedy would appreciate it.
He's apparently floating in the water there, completing all of his...
I don't know whether you could find out what happened. There's been a certain amount of confusion here. The capsule landed completely out of our sight over the horizon where the destroyer NOAA, commanded by Captain J.D. Exum, is now in the process of racing the Marine helicopters to recover the capsule and get the first look and have a first talk with Colonel John Glenn after his historic 3 times around the Earth in the ionosphere. Here's another example.
Indicating one of the helicopters has taken off. It should be over the capsule in a couple of minutes, in which case it will be in voice communication with John Glenn, and Cape Canaveral will be able to read that voice communication. Whether they release it to us or not is something else.
Speed up to 21 knots and try to get to the recovery scene as soon as possible.
emergency at this point, because in this weather and sea condition, if the chute opened intact, that landing would be so soft that John Glenn will probably be sitting there calmly checking out his spacecraft and closing down the switches and probably musing about a book, if any. And Al Shepard or Gus Grissom may have sent him some short stories to read while he's waiting. Incidentally, Glenn, of course, is in radio communication with Cape Canaveral. He has not lost any communication just because the capsule's sitting on the water. He has a 16-foot antenna which popped out of the back of it just before he hit the water. And that antenna is now his means of communication with Cape Canaveral, so that they know he's all right, or we would hear differently.
The advice for him to stay in the spacecraft indicates, Merrill, that they were in voice contact with him after he hit the water.
5 hours even since we launched this morning.
5 hours since the liftoff of Atlas 109D and spacecraft Friendship 7. All objectives apparently completed.
All and more.
Little bonuses thrown in.
3 left to go, 4 really. A dry landing for John Glenn on the ship, on the destroyer or on the carrier. About 45 hours of rest at Grand Turk in the Bahamas for medical examination and debriefing. A hero's reception in Washington.
Surely a medal from the president.
And a family reunion.
And a family reunion. We're still waiting word. Bill Downs, our reporter aboard the USS Randolph, the recovery, the aircraft carrier in charge of the recovery task force down there. As he explained, apparently the spacecraft Friendship 7 landed about 50 miles from them over the horizon, and the destroyer Noah is closer to it. And now the helicopters from the Randolph and also the destroyer Noah are closing in to pick up the capsule, and the race is on. Still no word from spacecraft control and Colonel John Powers here, but I'm assuming he is waiting